All right, let's get started. So, Noah, if you wouldn't mind, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, Aaron. My name is Noah Oakenberg. I am one of the co-founders of Above the Frey, along with Aaron Hunt and Marisol Garcia. And I guess fancy title is the CEO, which basically means I'm sweeping the floors, taking out the garbage, and on Thursdays, and wiping the eye boogers out of everybody's eyes before when they wake up, making sure I's are dotted, T's are crossed, all that good stuff.
Yeah, make sure the ship's going the right direction, right?
Yes.
All right. So, tell me a little bit about what Above the Fray is. Where did the name come from, and then what do you guys do?
Yeah. So we are about to celebrate our 9th anniversary. Aaron Hunt and I started the company. We used to work together some time ago at another agency and found a lot of success in that relationship. And then just decided that we wanted to do things a little bit differently than we had done other places and learn the lessons, positive and challenging, from everything else. And so we decided to start a little side gig called Above the Frey, which after a year, people still wanted to give us money and didn't hate us. And so we said, hey, this might be legit. We always focused on e-commerce, digital commerce, from the get-go. It was part of our background in digital and technology. But we use e-commerce as a vehicle to drive down the road of technology evolution and where all that goes, meaning that a lot of the folks that we work with, we focus on manufacturing and distribution. And so it's like the E word, the e-commerce word. And as you know, sometimes you'll get sort of a glazed over look if you use it. Like, well, we don't sell t-shirts online, or if we do, it's just our swag store. And it's, so, unless you're like some of the folks that actually make a nice revenue from their swag store. I saw at Con Expo,
Oh, yeah.
some folks charging $50-$60 for their hoodies or t-shirts even. So, but other than that, most of the commerce that we do online is less transactional and more, operational.
So, you're more B2B than really B2C is what you're focusing on, or do you both?
We do some B2C, but definitely B2B is our focus, and really starting to veer more into sort of the B2B2C world. So where you have multiple layers, OEMs that are looking to enable their distribution network, their dealer networks, and help them sell more and be more effective with their customers.
So that'd be the manufacturer, then to the dealer, the B2B relationship there, and then from their standpoint, maybe even implementing something from the dealer standpoint that goes out directly to the consumer.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, even if they're not doing it directly, and we have worked with some folks that actually we're doing that, where we set up storefronts for, the OEMs will actually set up a storefront or a web portal for their dealers. Sometimes it's just keeping that in mind, that's ultimately the end goal, maybe short of actually setting up those B2B, the 2C layer of it, but always keeping that in mind as part of that continuum of what we're trying to do and help the folks we work with accomplish.
So, one of the things that you talked about glazed over look and stuff like that, is that I struggle with on our side when I talk to people is getting these OEMs to even buy into the idea that is even a functional piece. Are they coming to you, or are you bringing up the ideas to them and here's how you can deliver it? What's your approach in that methodology?
It's been a long curve for sure. And back to your question of why I started ATF and Above the Fray and what we're all about. I believe strongly, especially with those of us that spend so much time in front of computer screens. I like to work with people that are got their hands in the dirt, are building things and growing things and producing things. And so that was a choice I made early on. And having worked, in the heavy equipment world with the organization that I was full-time at, I was at Pop Art full-time. When Above the Fray started as a side project, we were already involved in that world. We had built some sales enablement software for dealers, for OEMs. It was produced out of a custom-built iPad app and whole sort of ecosystem that we built for Daimler and Freightliner trucks. And we built a SaaS app out of it. So I was spending a lot of time with OEMs and sales enablement for their dealers. So that kind of bled into what we were doing at Above the Fray. And there's always been this educational curve, and I think it's it's not going to be just you and me banging a drum, though you and I can be pretty effective. I've seen that. You got folks like the folks over at AEM who have been pushing this narrative and showing the value and sort of some of the existential crisis for OEMs that aren't adapting to some of these things. And so it's been a long curve over time. So to answer your question, yes, we are absolutely going out there and trying to educate. There are more and more folks that have heard that drumbeat over the last decade plus that are starting to see the value and the reason to do it. They still have a lot of headwind. A lot of times it's from their dealer networks, and you're going to get that with any traditional sort of, setup like that. I don't care what industry it's in, if it's mountain bikes or heavy equipment. When your traditional channel has been through your dealer network and you want to create a online portal where people can either buy directly through you or even through your dealers, there's going to be pushback, especially when the sales reps are used to closing deals on the 19th tee, and with people they've known for generations, and saying, hey, do this on an iPad or do this on a website. And they're like, yeah, that's not how this works. You're like, well, it's how it's going to work, at least part of it. So,
I mean, to be honest, I think I definitely know there's people out there that would today purchase a piece of heavy equipment without requiring a dealer involved, is the truth. I do know people that are like, I already know the equipment, I already been using it. I need a second one. I don't need to go through a whole dealer experience, or even in the automotive industry where you're going to a dealer and try to purchase something. The one thing I'm not a big fan of Tesla's products anymore, to be honest. Over the last few years, I feel like they've slid off over the last few years. But
Yep.
like the idea of the purchase option, making it flawless and easy experience to purchase online, is always been like, I wish every industry went that way. Like I could go in and purchase those things. Now, I don't know if $1 million piece of equipment is the best way to pirate it online if you haven't tested or played the product or know what the service availability is the correct thing. But I will say making it at least like parts, components, attachments easier to be able to acquire and make it delivered, or show up at your facility, it seems no brainer at this point. Allowing less time for these farmers, the people that are in contractors, like that, they don't have to spend time at these other locations to do that. And to be honest, the dealer's still going to reap all the benefits from the support services and all the things like that have the higher margin on it anyways. It
Right.
seems illogical for companies to not do it these days.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I think the problem is, and for those of us that are in the digital world, we kind of have this vacuum or echo chamber, where we come up with the latest, greatest technology, and we just have this tunnel vision that it's so great, and we don't apply it to the folks that are actually going to be using it, and we don't pay enough attention to what the actual goal is. And the goal isn't to necessarily like, hey, let's move everything over to a website. The goal isn't to let's sell more e-commerce, let's do this. The goal is simply to help facilitate what's already happening in a more efficient way, a more effective way, to allow the people that are out there pounding the pavement, having the human to human, face-to-face contact, that are going out to the farms, that are going out to the job sites, and to have more of that time and less of the time spending on paperwork and looking things up and trying to remember how something's configured. And you might not buy that $1 million piece of equipment online. You might not even, your customer might not even ever use the online portal. But if you have a configurator as a dealer sales rep that your OEM has provided you that helps you keep up with the latest, greatest configurations, we're dealing with sales reps that may or may not be new to the job, that can easily put an order in that completely screws everything up on this $1 million piece of equipment. The whole bill of materials gets sent in, and then it starts to get fulfilled, and then you have to rebuild the whole thing because this was an outdated component or part or whatever that was used. So these are and I'm not using that example as an end all be all. I'm just using it to say that, like, we in the digital technology world need to remember what our value is and what it isn't. I always use this analogy of, like, if you were going to build a high rise building in the middle of downtown Portland here, where we're headquartered in Portland, Oregon. Use a crane to put the thing up, and and as part of the the process, and then the whole thing's done, and the crane is still sitting there on the road blocking the front entrance. It's like, great.
Mhm.
That was a great piece of technology that you could not do the job without, but its job is done. Get out of the way. And I think that's where sometimes we do ourselves a disservice by trying to insist that our technology, our digital, whatever these things will do more than they need to. And if we knew the roles and the exact finite places that it can help, then we get more credibility when we're going out there trying to help people use the technology versus, hey, look, everything should transform to this and blah. No, figure out.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll give you a great example of where I don't think the technology is good right now. So I'm setting up a home office right now, right? And I have to buy a chair, right?
Yeah.
And the problem is I'm going to want to sit in that chair. To buy a chair online doesn't seem logical to me. Now I will probably end up making a purchase possibly on, make it an easier transaction to have it shipped to me. But like right now I need to go to a facility to sit in that chair to see, that's a perfect example of just simply, I still want to be able to get inside of the piece of equipment in these things. Just trying to look at removing the barriers and making it an easier transaction across the board, where it becomes a positive experience versus a negative experience. And a lot of times, unfortunately, right now, it's a really long, arduous process. It's handwritten notes still, all these different things, depending on the type of dealer and the type of distributor or even the relationship on the OEM side. It blows my mind that there's no real workflows. Some of those companies, though, are doing an amazing job. I'm not going to name names on these companies, but some of them are doing it where their commerce site, you can order it directly from the OEM, and the dealer just gets a check saying hey,
That's
I ordered these parts and components, and the dealer just all of a sudden sees because it's their, they want that dealer to still exist, and they need that dealer because that, again, something's going to break, something goes wrong. Having that facilitator to be able to be there and that local presence is still massively important in that process. Yeah.
You nailed it. I mean, that is the most important thing I try to impress upon folks when they're talking, and they're going out trying to get consensus from their dealer networks, and that's the number. I mean, there's well, you're going to cannibalize our business, and no, we're actually going to help grow it because we're giving you the credit. I mean, a lot of times that check represents maybe not the full amount of margin that they would have got if they had sold it on their own and sourced it, but sometimes it does. I've talked to some OEMs that are like, look, the dealers push back and say, we don't want it because if we sold this direct, it would be 100% of this margin. Instead, we're getting 50% because it's so this online source.
There's no operating cost around it either.
And the OEMs are like, well, how about we give you 100% of it, the same that you would have got anyway. Oh, plus you have a new service contract, plus all the parts. This is going to be your customer. They will be assigned to you because by the region, you're the closest. So we're just growing your customer base. And then the next step from there is actually building those experiences that are unique for their dealers, where they're rolling them out. So the dealers actually have their own branded storefront, their own branded website. They don't have maybe the capital or the human capital to sort of create something like that, because it is a huge undertaking, especially if you've never done it. So the OEMs are investing in actually rolling these out. So, you create a template that it's all operated by the same backend. There's obviously complexities because everybody may have a different ERP or inventory management or CRM. And so there's different integrations for that. But the idea is the opposite of the pushback that you normally get. It's not, we're not trying to take your job. We're trying to give you more money and let you be more efficient at your job. And I think that's the education piece that has been really important, because too much this education has been adapt or die, do technology, do digital, do online. Okay, great. But make it practical again, make it applicable to the situation that these folks are in.
Yeah, it's I know you and I have lightly talked about this before, but the idea of the current infrastructure that's in place for dealers, for the people that own the equipment, even they're not ready for the current technology that's out today. It's going to take them a while to adapt into all these different things. But I mean, the thing is, every single one of those, again, if my 80-year-old mother orders everything off Amazon, has it delivered directly to her house, and she doesn't own a computer. She only has an iPhone. You know what I mean? Like she only has one device that she does that stuff off of. And I know a lot of these. I talk to these people that are principal owners. I talk to the farmers, and some of them are small, some of them are big, and they would love that idea of being able to make it an easier transaction, a simplified process. They don't want to spend the additional time. Now, some of them do, and I think having that customer service is imperative. You can't remove that from it. But I can guarantee you, like a farmer or a technician or somebody that's out in the field, if they could go over with their device and scan a QR code that allowed them to see, okay, this is the part and components I need, and I don't have to go drive all the way down there to figure out and get the parts components from the dealer, or call the dealer and see if they have those things, where I could just order it online and have it in 24, 48 hours or next day or whatever, having the time frame for the shipping and then tracking information for the whole thing. That right there alone removes a huge burden from that person, because then they can even optimize for it. Like, okay, it's gonna be 5 days before we get this part. Let's go to the next piece. Let's get what we need to get done while we're waiting for these parts and things to show up. Because now you've removed a ton of time from that.
What you're talking about, and what you're talking about previously, is this customer journey, and I think that is sort of that's actually well aligned with the point that I'm trying to make about make it about them and how it works. I mean, figure out where on that customer journey it can be useful and where it can't be. Even to your example that you just mentioned, I would say there may be some uncomfortable, like, sort of fear factor of even completing that order after they scan the QR code, they find the part. That's fine. Maybe just make that the first piece of the conversation, so they can actually scan the QR code, they get that, it sends it to the dealer and says, like, hey, I'm just making sure this is right. It doesn't actually do the transaction.
A validation process. Yeah.
Right. Like if they're not ready, like it's too much of a leap of faith to actually do the purchase all through that, because maybe it's just, it's a gap, as far as what they've been used to doing and to where they're going. And then, then the comfort starts getting more and more. They start relying, and understanding that the technology won't let them down, and that they can make that purchase. But at least, figure out how to be that sort of gateway, that bridge through that buying process, through that customer journey. And again, it has to be specific to the folks that we're serving. It cannot be like we're, selling fashion or selling health and beauty or selling, every
different customer base, right? Yeah.
Very different customers doing very different things. We're all human. Sure. There's psychological, factors that are universal, but there's also just different practical, boots on the ground differences of how these things are happening.
Yeah. It's you brought up the idea of the technology, like, and I brought up like one of those pieces of the scanning QR code, like that journey. And I would tell you, like, a year and a half ago, if I was to call a company and I got a bot where I'm literally asking a question, or it wasn't ready, like nothing was ready. But I do think it's heading that direction where it's starting to become ready. Like, my parents, they get their medication from Walmart, and I have to take care of it for them. My father's got Parkinson's, so I help with the system, right? So literally yesterday, I have to like look up a prescription. I'm like, ah, shoot, I have to call them, and I called the number, and it was a bot. And the bot, I gave them it asked me basic questions. I walked through the thing, and I asked my mom about it. I was like, she's like, oh yeah, it's been like that for forever. It works great every time. And I'm like, I was kind of blown away. Again, my 80-year-old mother, who gets very frustrated about these type of things, had no problems talking to this artificial intelligence, walking through that process. And then again, if they got to a point where I was stuck and I did need to talk to somebody, it immediately got to a person, like within seconds of me saying, I'm not understanding what this is. Yep, let's get you a person. They put me on the phone and they had it resolved. A transaction that I was definitely worried that was going to take a half hour took literally 5 minutes, and I was blown away. Again, utilizing the technology to make it a better customer journey and story. And praises to Walmart at this point, because it was pretty great. I was surprised. Yeah, I mean, I hope to be able to do that on like different scales, and I think in the e-commerce world, more and more companies are obviously heading those directions. And if it's going to improve support, I'm all about it. But I've been known very publicly about my stance on a human interaction on customer support is so important. But maybe we're starting to head that direction where it's not necessarily not important, but it's as long as it's being used as a way to reduce the overall volume that some of these people have, it'll give that ability for better support. Again, I thought I was going to have to wait for a half hour, and seconds I was with a person. So maybe that's changing. I don't know. Yeah.
It
What do you
is.
think on that from a customer service standpoint? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thought is that, when technology is not ready, it can sort of do our cause of trying to implement it a disservice, right? So like, everybody has that experience that you're mentioning of being super frustrating and, frustrated about, you know, you know, please enter your phone number at
Yeah.
after the beep. And it's like, I just want to say it now. I don't want to wait for your like 10-second like spiel. And then when I say it, I'm sorry, can you try it again? And I've just said it. And, like that's going to have you running for the hills. And probably a lot of folks don't even want to work with that particular company anymore.
Nope.
So, for the folks that are doing it, not everybody's got Walmart money to invest in a better system, but the sort of blessing and curse of things is that, some of the new AI learning language models, things like that are coming out are becoming grand equalizers. So companies of different size have access to more efficient and more effective tools to be able to sort of automate and make more efficient the processes that are delayed and lagging. For instance, back to the farmer in the field, if maybe there's a part they don't even know the name of. Maybe they just want to put their camera up and be like the thingamajiggy whizmabob, whatever. And there's a learning language model that behind that can read it and be like, I know exactly what that is. That's the flux capacitor, or whatever, flux capacitor. The right now, I tried to do that with my car the other day. I got a ticket for not having a front license plate, and there's no front license plate, place to put it on my wife's car. And so I'm trying to, use an AI to basically take pictures of where do I put this? How do I drill this? What's the easiest way? I want a no drill option. And it comes up with these things, and it's like, this is it for sure. I go and order it. And it even gets me the link on Amazon. I click the link to Amazon. I order it, and it's like, I get it. I'm like, wait, where the hell do I put this? This doesn't work. There's not a place for that. And then I go back to the same thread, and it's like, oh, you're right. Sorry. This is a different car, different model. I put the same model in everything. So those type of like, I actually did that twice because I'm an idiot. First time, shame on them. Second time, shame on me. But, and now I have two different, things that don't fit on the vehicle. Those kind of experiences are going to have, somebody that's out in the field, out in the farm, running for the hills. If you're trying to tell them, hey, look, this new system is so great, you can just take a picture and it'll tell you what it is. And then, you order it and it's the wrong thing. Like, downtime is not just frustration. That's money. That's efficiency.
You're down for another week, possibly on that product or that part or whatever. Yeah. That could be a huge money.
Yeah. So I think, back to your original question, my take on it is that, it's a fine line, and it's a balancing act that we have to do, where we're, us being in these worlds can't oversell stuff. We can't say, hey, look, this automated phone system is going to work amazing for you, when it's still going to have these glitches, until it's that sort of Walmart pharmacy experience ready.
And who knows, that could be terrible the next time I call, but like, as I was just blown away at how good it was this one time.
Right. Yeah, but it used to be that there wasn't that one time. It was always that terrible experience, or most of the time. So, and they are getting better. So, I think, again, that my first kind of reaction to that is, it's our job as sort of the Sherpas in that world to not oversell it, to be very specific and really consultative about where we know it can provide value and help. And when we know that there's going to be glitches or issues or hallucinations or whatever, that we don't put that in front of people that we know probably won't come back to it for another decade, even if it's ready in 6 months. So, that's not something a bot can emulate either. That's something that you and I and our colleagues have to wrap our heads around and be consultative about.
I push hard on testing quite frequently. Like, when a customer asks, like, hey, we really want to try this new feature, I'm like, that's really problematic here, and there's a concern on this, and here's where I think it's amazing, we want to do this. I love pushing the envelope forward on this stuff. Here's what we should probably do. Like maybe pick out 3 of your dealers or 3 of your top customers, and you think that would benefit from this. Let's just implement it for them. Let them know it's a beta. Let's get the information back on it so that we don't really mess this up. Because if it becomes a default feature for a bunch of people and it really creates a lot of problems and issues, you've lost so much credibility so fast,
And
especially when you're
I
building
don't
up
think
these
there's
type of things.
I don't
Yeah.
think there's any other way to do it in
Yeah.
2026. Like that has to be the way. And for some folks, they're impatient and they're like, no, we want to roll this whole thing out. And then again, back to what our job is to say, okay, cool, I'm not going to be a part of that. Like,
Yep. Walk away.
that's
Exactly.
hard,
Yes. Yep.
you
Yep.
know,
Yep.
it's hard.
We've definitely done that.
We want to do stuff. We want to progress and we want to move forward and we want to help folks, but that's not going to help anybody, because you don't know. You got to have that control group. So yeah.
Well, it's a giant possible failure on your list. I mean, if you're willing to try and test out and put time into it, I'll be willing to put my own personal time into it on top of it to learn about it and do those type of things. But for somebody to just push out automatically, I agree with you 100%. We've walked away, unfortunately, too many times from situations like that. That is a hard one to say no to, because you want to see it, you want to do it, but at the same time, if it's going to hurt your brand, their brand, it makes everything negative in the future. You got to make sure you're looking long term, not just simply tomorrow. Right.
Yeah. Just introduce them to the people that tried it that way yesterday, and see. I'm just like, hey, just go talk to Susie or Joe over here. They tried to do it all at once too. I'm not going to even get in the middle of that conversation. You see what they say.
Well, I mean, to be honest, you brought up the image capture function of the utilizing your camera to do. I mean, Google has had Google Lens, right, for forever, where you can now do it, and it has the shot function. TikTok has really done an amazing job where inside the app itself, you can highlight oh, there's a cool lamp back there, and hit the lamp and highlight it, and then it'll go and search on their store to sell you that lamp or something that's similar to it. And from a consumer standpoint, with something that maybe costs you $50 or something like that, it's a little different than something where you may lost your business, like because you're down for another week and it costs you 10 grand. There's definitely a difference there. But I think the B2C market is stepping up, and it'll bring and implement bigger into the B2B. But yeah, I think it's pretty amazing having this technology, and I would recommend people in those specific things to have that as an option, with the idea of, again, I love the validation process. I never thought about that. Whereas like, hey, validate this with your dealer, go back or have it. Hey, is this the right part? Or maybe a technician hotline, depending on the organization. Some of them have those, right, where you can call, validate this is the correct piece or component on their setup. So that's a really smart idea. I like that idea a lot. Yeah.
And it's funny too, because that adage that if you go out and ask people for help with something, they just ignore it. But if you give them the wrong answer, then they want to correct you. So I kind of use like LLM, learning language models, and AI in a similar way. Like, and sometimes technology. It's like, hey, this might not be the right answer, but at least it'll give me the wrong answer that I can be like, that's not right, and then figure it out from there. Similarly, it starts the conversation with the technician or the dealer, and it allows at least that bridge, and it's a quick thing too. Upload it quickly. Maybe the system that you've built for the farmer that's out there, works 7 times out of 10. It comes up with the right part, but you have a big disclaimer. Look, don't order this. I mean, you even tell them ahead of time. Folks will respect that. I think especially, the folks that are used to, working with their hands, and they get it. Like, things don't always perform as they should. And,
they expect things to break.
Expect things to break. Exactly.
Yeah.
But what they don't respect is folks that say, hey, this will never break, because we all know that's hogwash. And so, you gotta set those expectations correctly. So, you mentioned something else too that was interesting, that I thought was important, and I've heard this a lot too. You kind of mentioned using examples from like D2C or B2C, and then sort of how you can convert those over to like a B2B scenario. And I think there's a lot of folks that say, less like for instance, I used an example earlier of the Freightliner mobile sales tool that Pop Art built, and like that, that's something where you get to learn a lot of different lessons when you go then build a larger or more of a SaaS app. But for the example, I mean, we're actually currently building the TikTok and actually the Meta app integration apps with Adobe Commerce with the new SaaS program. And so, you know, I hear a lot of times folks are saying, well, what are they doing over there? You know, and that was actually my point with the Freightliner example. Is a lot of times, you know, heavy equipment industry is like saying, hey, look to automotive. What on highway has done, you know, several years ago is what you should be looking to be doing, you know, now. Sometimes what D2C has been doing, you know, what are people using? How are people shopping with the TikTok, with the, you know, the lamp in the background, highlighting it, finding it, being able to send it directly to this, you know, the cart, things like that. You know, it doesn't mean you control C, control V for, you know, somebody that's selling parts on a combine, you know, to a farmer. But you can extrapolate and you can convert it. You use those lessons, you definitely modify it, but there's commonalities that you can leverage.
So I'm a massive fan of pitchmen. You know, I absolutely love an infomercial. You know, something back in the 80s, because I didn't sleep when I was a kid. I literally would sneak downstairs at 2 o'clock in the morning and watch terrible infomercials like Amazing Discoveries and things like that. I obsessed over it. And I love that today that is now the default. Like TikTok.
That explains
really
a lot. That explains a lot. Yeah.
You know, like TikTok is that now. It's very much those things are now everybody's pitching a product and things like that. And it is something I am definitely talking to every customer about. That you should be talking about your products in a format that's quick for people to find and research. So that if they want to know more about your engine, your part, your component, people are going to use these tools to look that stuff up. And I think by putting that stuff out now, it helps from a marketing standpoint. Even if you get 20 views on it, as long as those 20 views are the people that are looking for your item, you're now already much better than anybody else out there, because nobody else is doing it. And I've shown evidence and proof on how this stuff works. So the idea of, like, you know, when people say, oh yeah, that's not our market, TikTok. No, people they're there. They're on Facebook. They're on these other platforms. And if you could even start making your content in that format or in a way that they can absorb it, even if they're a farmer, even if they're a technician, like, they want access to the stuff and being able to see it at a quick level. So I think that's where everybody should be going right now. From a B2B standpoint, is that pitchman strategy of, here's this and here's the component, here's the attachment, here's what it does. And, like, you know, back in the old days of Ronco, where, like, he's cutting up the I don't know if you remember that guy, but, you know, set it and forget it guy, where he also had the knives, he's cutting everything up and stuff like that. Show people cutting. You take your, you know, your excavator and dig something out, or an auger, and you know, show something that's, you know, doing it in small little bits, and like how this is going to improve your ability. I see these things as wins right now, and that's where the transactions are now. I don't even think that's like the future. I think that's right now. Like, people would, and maybe I'm wrong, but the data I've done with the 3 or 4 companies that are buying into this, we're seeing the data as it's positive. Yeah,
it is. That's the part of that human psychology that I said is similar, right? Like, there's differences in how people, you know, do their jobs and do the work and the customer journey, to actually buy in different spaces, you know, makeup versus combines. But they're still humans with similar psychology, and, you know, that those sort of quick hit sound bites of things that are interesting, you know, the reels, those are going to be universally appreciated. Not everybody doesn't have half an hour to sit down and watch a, you know, infomercial or the new version of that. Great example, one of my clients does rock crushing, and my 8-year-old came in and like, I was showing him a video of it, and it was like super fun. It was like, you know, getting the asphalt out of the ground, up the conveyor belt, coming down, crushing it up, all the way down to, you know, creating the gravel, and then, you know, repurposing, or you know, and so and I'm sitting there watching it for like 10 minutes, and after like 30 seconds, he's like, that was really cool. You could tell he was captivated, and then he just kind of like lost his attention. And so, you know, like, that's, and you got to think, I mean, the new generations that are coming up that will be the buyers, that will be, I worked with another rock crushing company a long time ago at another organization I was a part of, and they wanted to acquire some software and some technology, but they had their number one sales rep, one of their number one dealer sales rep, fly out and meet me. His name was Charlie, and they said, "Look, we're going to buy." We're gonna buy from you. We're gonna partner with you to build this out and do this, but you got to convince Charlie first. And so they literally flew Charlie down to sit down with me one-on-one in Portland. And Charlie's like, "Look, I've done this amount in sales. I've crushed all the other sales reps at all the other dealerships year over year. I've never once. I don't even use my phone. Like I send out smoke signals and whatever. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but he was very technologically averse. And he's like, "Why would I need this?" I'm like, "You probably wouldn't, but you ever go out and talk to one of your customers and at their house?" He's like, "Yeah, of course. I have dinner and stuff like that." I was like, "You ever see their kids?" And he's like, "What are they doing?" He's like, "Oh, they're over the corner on their iPhone and blah blah blah." I was like, "Well, they're the ones that are taking over the business." Like, like that's. And he's like, "Oh yeah." I was like, they're taking over your job. One or the other. And so like, you don't have to love it. You don't even have to like it. But it's a thing, and leverage it for your advantage. And I think, that is an important piece of this too, is really understanding that, meeting folks where they're at. And we're watching the generational shift in front of our eyes, right? Every day that we get older, so do the next generation of folks that'll be filling our shoes in all these different roles. And they're going to have whole new ways that they were raised, and whole new ways that they're going to engage with their audiences and with their vendors and with their dealers and customers and all of that. So, we got to morph that. Like you said, it's happening now.
Yeah, it's current. So, one of the things that's like you and I sit on a couple of the reason we know each other is because we sit on a couple of boards with AEM, Association of Equipment Manufacturers and stuff like that, and we kind of have some similarities. Some of the tools that you provide, some of the things, but you guys do have a different approach to your e-commerce. What does that look like, and why do you prefer to go that method versus like what we do, which is a centralized product strategy? Why did you guys go your direction?
Yeah, and I think that is such a key difference that I spend a lot of my time trying to figure out how to really impress upon folks, is that the difference between product and service. And we are firmly a service organization. In fact, we're much more of a digital consultancy than we are like an e-commerce shop. And what I mean by that is, our job is not to come in and sell a thing. Our job is more to kind of figure out where technology and digital through the lens of commerce can provide the most value for efficiency, effectiveness, revenue growth, all of that. And so by that line of thinking, if we only offered one product or one platform or one, thing, then what normally happens, you've probably seen this too, is the folks that do that now. And I'm not talking about the folks that have their own product like yourself, but there's other folks that maybe are a service-based organization like us that maybe only does one type of e-commerce platform or one type of ERP integration or something like that. And you start to see, if you look at it over the course of time, like all of a sudden it's the best fit for everybody that they work with, whether or not it is. And so, we can't be everything to everybody, but we did want to choose some core options that we built business units around, and build expertise around delivering on, and consulting on. So, and that's part of our core model, essentially, to be able to look at, where you're at, where you want to be, how digital tools can help you get there. And then we're able to execute in some of those areas, but not all of them. Like, for instance, we don't implement ERPs. We have trusted partners that do that, but we are able to, we could implement the ERP if we wanted to. We haven't built a business unit around that. It would take us way more time to do it. So we bring in
trusted cost effective. Yeah.
Wouldn't be cost effective. So, we rely on partners you know, that have products such as yourself that we would be able to then recommend and help sort of figure out where that goes in the roadmap of this client's evolution. And then there are areas that we execute on. I mean, we know what we can do and what we can't. You know, there's many different platforms where, you know, we're Adobe Commerce, Magento, you know, Shopify, BigCommerce, and Shopware, you know, as primary e-commerce platforms that we work with, and we have distinct business units built for all of those, because it's not a one size fits all. You know, and if you talk to the platforms, no offense to our friends over at all these platforms, but a lot of them will say that they're the only one that works. Now they're evolving too, and a lot of these platforms, it's, you know, again, it's 2026, the information age is inundated into our veins, you know, and so like there's no hiding, and customers, buyers, if you try to fit a square peg into a round hole, they'll see through it much more often now.
100%. Yes.
So really the platforms are behind this too. And I've had a lot of these other e-commerce platforms say, you're right, this isn't a good fit, you should go work with them with that platform. But yeah,
I mean, that is our model. We're a service oriented company as well, but like we have a square peg sometimes, and I'll do the consulting where we walk through them like, this square peg does not fit in your round hole. You really need to go over here and talk to these people or these organizations, these different things, stuff like that. Because, you know, we're an 80-year-old company. We want long-term relationships. Some of our customers have been with us for 50, 60 years. So it's, you know, our goal is always long-term, never a short-term kind of fix. So that's why I really liked your model a little bit, like, because you really had that ability to be agnostic and allow you to really, here's what the customer truly needs. Here's my opportunity in this way, and here's how we can help and assist them get them what they need. I always thought that was an interesting approach from a.
And it allows us to, you know, form partnerships with folks that may otherwise be competitors, right? Because you know, there's always areas of overlap, but there's always areas that we don't touch and that we can't do or we don't have expertise in. And so, you know, this, I've looked at this firmly as a, you know, true sense of a rising tide. I think, you know, all of us that are kind of in the space, whether it's service or product, if it's digital, you know, through the lens of like digital commerce and digital technology, our competition are folks just not, you know, our potential customers or clients just not doing anything. It's not each other, you know, it's them just saying, hey, this is too much, or this is too much of a leap, or this diverges too much from our traditional model. So, you know, if we're sitting here competing against each other, focusing on all that time, our eyes aren't on the prize, and we're not actually doing anything for those folks that can be helped by what we're doing. And it's our job to help show them that appropriately. And if it's like, you know, Ken Cook can do something that Above the Frey can't do, and I try to sell it that Above the Frey can do it, versus just saying, hey, let's bring y'all into this and talk to them together, then it hurts not just us and our long-term relationship, but the industry as a whole of what we're all trying to do, because it loses credibility in a place that already has a trust gap that we're trying to bridge.
Yeah, that is a hard piece, is gaining that trust. And again, working for an organization I have as long as I have, we have the benefit of a lot of trust with a lot of our companies I've been working for, and we'll tell them straight up, like, hey, it's not a good fit for us. And we're like, hey, this is not a good fit. I was like, we wish we could do this, or we'll even tell them like, hey, we want to do this, but it's going to cost you probably 3 times more than if you went with any other vendor out there, just to be as honest as possible. And, you know, sometimes we get lucky and they still do it because they want to invest in us. Because again, it's the, you know, the devil you know versus the devil you don't, that kind of idea. In this case, hopefully they're not calling us devils, but what's that?
That honesty is so refreshing when people are being sold bills of good, you know, and smoke and mirrors day in and day out. Just to have somebody, it's just like, oh, well, I know that they're not lying because they just told me something I really didn't want to hear that doesn't help them out much, you know, like, you know, it's like, hey, no, I can beat any price on the market. You know, like, you know, really?
Yeah, I mean, don't be wrong. I've lost deals to price, and that's okay. That just means they're not my customer, is the truth. Like, if you going across the street saving you $5 difference in price is what's going to make it, like, that just tells me this is not a good fit in that sense, in a way. Not to say that we can't try to figure out a better strategy or things like that, but when I'm giving somebody a price, it's my price. Like, that's my, like, I have people, we have to pay their, insurance, we have to pay their salaries, we have, you know, and from us, our standpoint, from one of the things as we talk about is you know, we're American made, like we're very much, everybody here works here in the United States and things like that. For us, that's a core value that we focus on. And so we want to make sure that, you know, in case you didn't know, those salaries are not cheap here. So
Right. Yes.
so in order to keep that, we unfortunately have to charge higher. And yeah, somebody can come in and undercut us at, like, you know, I've had a company that's since $25 an hour for their implementation. So I was like, that's amazing. I'm glad you can get that. I can't, that's way below my cost, like
Right.
substantially below my cost. I was like, there's nothing I can do there. Thank you so much for the time. If that's the price that you need to pay, then thank you. I really appreciate it. But like,
Have you
this
ever
is not
seen
going to be a good fit.
that meme with a guy with the tattoo that wants to get like the unicorn on the shoulder or whatever, and it's like, you know, you can always find somebody to do it for cheaper, and it's like this stick figure unicorn tattoo.
Yes.
I've literally sent that to, so I've had friendly relationships with some folks that I've been in that cycle with that say, hey, we're gonna, why wouldn't we do it over here? And I've just sent that back as my response on an email. But yeah, I mean, you're right though. It is, you got to know your customers and who they are, and that's okay to walk away. People will build trust. They'll find, you know, they'll find where they need to be. And if they make the wrong choice for the wrong reasons, they'll find that out too, unfortunately.
Even if it's the right choice, like if they like, yeah, I don't have the budget for it, this is the only way I can afford it, and it's what they need, and they actually get it, and it's good and awesome. Yeah. I'm not mad. I'm actually excited to see what you guys are building and what can you put out there and what's available. And I'm excited to see it. That's the way I always look.
Yeah.
So one of the things I do like to ask a little bit about is if you could redesign the current infrastructure that's in place for the heavy equipment industry. So like, let's say like, you know, the current dealer model, the current, like, how would you rebuild that with the idea of it being a digital first strategy versus the, you know, going to a physical retail store, hand-drawn paper? Like, how would you rebuild that into, like, I'm starting, like, there are tons of startups that are doing this, by the way, right now, in the heavy equipment industry that are going about it in this approach. How would you build it in your way to make this an easier approach for people to get what they want?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're ever going to get away from the hands-on experience, because it's, you know, these things need to be hands-on. I mean, we were just at the Con Expo a couple weeks ago, and, you know, largest show in Vegas, I think, or one of them, you know, over 140,000 people, because they want to be hands-on. You know, that's why. So you're not going to get away from that, no matter how hard you try. So I think the digital first means also it's almost invisible digital, that it doesn't insist upon itself, that it just feels seamless as part of the whole relationship, that it's not like, you know, it's not saying, hey, here's me, I'm digital, you know, pay attention to me and use me and I'm going to solve all your problems. It just fits right in with everything else that you've been doing. And I think, again, back to what we've been talking about, those lessons need to be learned from the D2C world, from the other B2B industries that have, you know, are maybe more advanced, you know, with some of this technology. Ease of use, customer journey, figure out where you can embed and, you know, start using some of these technologies in real ways. A lot of times, you know, I mean, take a basic example of how like 90% of sales people don't even want to use CRM. It's just, you know, technology gets in their way. They hate updates. Right. Yeah. They hate the time to sit down there and do their paperwork, quote unquote. And the new paperwork is, you know, online. And so how do you move it away from that? Well, for me, having a background, most of my entire career in business development and sales, you know, I like voice activated stuff. I like taking pictures of things and having it do that. I like, take a picture of this, hit the thing, talk to it real quick. You know, some people I talk to, maybe about, you know, 10, 20 years older than me, are like, I will never talk to a machine like it's a person. Okay, great. But if you can get past the, like, that kind of weird, and that's weird. I agree. It's weird.
I don't think it's weird at all. I have 3 children. All 3 of them do it by default.
Right. I know, but if you've never done it your whole life, and, you know, like, it is a strange transition. But, you know, helping people get past that, to see the convenience of, like, you know, I just left a job site and I want to, and I got, maybe I'm the sales rep and I want to put an order in. My you know, OEM has a catalog that I can all search by voice, that I can say, I can just click here and I can do this, or I can upload a bunch of images and that I took, and it'll instantly put together a bill of materials, or at least an item list for me that I can then verify, when I get back to my desk, and it reduces the CRM time. Is there a way that I can, take voice notes that all of a sudden, like, it takes it all to different places. It sends it into our commerce portal online to create the list, of parts that I need to order, or, actually feeds the configurator, and it also populates my CRM, so I don't have to sit there and type it all up. So I think all those different touch points that already exist, that are friction, that are time, that we would love to have back in our lives, to spend with our customers, to spend with our families, to spend, anywhere else besides typing in front of a computer, or just doing manual work, or doing things that AI can do for us, or that a computer, whatever digital can do for us. Just start with those and start building a whole journey around that, rather than trying to say, let's build this full digital ecosystem. You walk into the holodeck and, like, your whole life is transformed. That's just,
that'd be cool.
I mean, the holodeck. Okay. I take it back. That's a bad example. That one would be actually the best. That would be optimal. If you just step inside there and then you have a virtual showroom, and you can actually get inside of the the dozer and start running things over with it or whatever. But pick your attachment, like
that sounds sweet.
But short of that, I think we're, there's that, and then Westworld, and then we have the evolution of sci-fi that I'm a firm believer will come true one day. That's why I watch sci-fi. My wife's like, why do you always watch that stuff? I'm like, I'm just trying to learn about what's about to happen. But I think we don't try to create this like digital first ecosystem. We create the invisible digital, where it just fits in to all the different places that we don't want to be doing that much, or spending that much time, and then we can spend more time in the other areas and make sure that it doesn't infringe upon that time where we don't want to be doing digital, right? That we do want to spend more time, whether it's family, customers, colleagues, our dealer channels, our distribution networks, wherever it's at, like don't infringe on that human to human contact. In fact, give us more of it. And I think that's the one challenge that more and more of us are realizing needs to happen. Before any of this stuff happens, Aaron, and I think we haven't really gotten into this topic yet, but I think it's the elephant in the room, is everybody wants to do, I mean, even the people that want to take advantage of all this bleeding edge or cutting edge technology, AI specifically, but have, their CRM data or their ERP data or their Excel spreadsheets, are just a mess. And there is no way, it's bad data in, bad data out. You try to feed that into a learning language model and you wonder why it hallucinates, right? Like it's, so we need to take a step back before we get into this sort of digital first or even invisible digital world, and realize where the sort of like brass tacks is on the data cleansing and organization.
There is some pretty interesting technology that is being implemented now and over the last year that will, I think, help and assist quite a bit. It's going to take a lot of trust and a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of shadowing. So the idea of people being shadowed as they go through their process and do things, to be able to understand and how to clean that up efficiently, and making sure that not just simply cleaning it up once, because it's like, just like, I got my office here. It's actually rather clean right now because I just cleaned it. But like, if I leave it, it's eventually going to accumulate more things if I don't continue to put the new practice in place.
Right.
Making sure I hang this up, I put the hat up there. If I don't do those things and continue that good practice, it's going to become a mess again. So it's a change management strategy in itself, because there are technology right now that can clean it up for the most part, 80 to 90% that can do a really good job of cleaning up a lot of that data, depending how bad it is to begin with, obviously.
Right.
And where, like, was it all handwritten notes and then somebody literally manually typed it in, and, or were they scanned in using an OCR and the OCR doesn't understand the difference between, because it was, scanned in maybe in the 80s or 90s or something like that.
Right.
So it depends on how old that data is. I do think it's an opportunity for these startups right now that are coming into the fold. If they can start in a way utilizing these technologies, it's going to make them more agile and quicker, where they have an opportunity to take over some of these behemoths, I think, because of that ability of new data from the ground up, essentially. So there's real opportunities with a couple of these different groups. But no, you're 100% correct. If you're not utilizing the data correctly or putting it up in a proper way, you can really make a giant mess of things, especially utilizing AI. I think in the very near future, that we will be at a point where maybe computers aren't even the terminal that we use to actually interface. And I hope I know you and I are, but we talked about this the other day, is that I'm a big component of Google Home. I use it all the time. I have it throughout my entire house. And I even talked about how it got a little dumber because of AI, like just recently when they switched over to Gemini.
Right when I switched over to Google Home. Yeah, exactly. Thanks for giving me a little bit of context on that too.
But here's the thing, like that dumbness, again, it's going through a training phase and it's learning these new things and these new processes. And hopefully it's not a Dave situation where it's going to try to eat us alive, but that we're training it in a way for it to know that, I would love to not have to go to Target to pick up milk on Tuesdays or whatever, because it just shows up in my house. I would prefer that type of stuff where it starts understanding these things and starts automatically just fulfilling or putting those things in place, or knowing like, oh, hey, you got to take the kids to tutoring. You have to take them to theater. You have to take them to baseball. Like, I would love it to start doing those things more effectively and more efficiently to make it so that I can spend more time with them. I'm not looking on my device to constantly look it up. I think heading that direction is a wonderful thought process. And again, having the data is going to be super, super important on making sure that data is clean. But if I start giving it a bunch of like calendar dates that are incorrect or times that are incorrect, it's starting to learn the wrong stuff, right? It's again, the data in, data out type of thing. Do you have a strategy right now where you're helping customers when you do an implementation to clean up data right now?
I mean, I think that begins with sort of education, and it's almost campaigning, it's so yes, absolutely. We have the tools and strategy and processes to do that, but it's more reining in the desire to skip over it. So it's the change management and the education of the existential importance of that change management that I think is the bigger hurdle than the actual, cleaning it up and getting it in order. That part there's plenty of outfits that can do that. There's tools that are making it easier and easier. A lot of the concerns are around security and privacy, and there's ways to sort of assuage those concerns. So there's, so really the education piece is what we're focusing on, and also the discipline, because quite frankly, it's just as tempting for us to, say, hey, let's just dive head first. Like, we want to do all this cool stuff, we want to jump right to that sort of, holodeck, before it's ready. So I think, working backwards with the end user in mind, all the way to that sort of foundational, get your house in order start is sort of and showing that, being able to help show that, and then take bite-sized pieces, because you got to create wins. A lot of times these are folks that maybe haven't done a lot. And we're working with large organizations that are doing, hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars that really just haven't even gotten into this space yet. And so they have the budget to do the most amazing technological implementations, digital across everything, but they don't have, they wouldn't get the budget approval because it hasn't been a line item in the past. And so, how do you find those quick wins? Back to your point earlier, sometimes maybe you're not going to convince, multiple stakeholders from multiple countries, and, especially if it's a North American branch of a, overseas owned, OEM, you're not going to go in there and sell a data transformation project, you got to start with the proof of concept. You got to start with just solving one thing, and then, start gaining that trust. Ken Cook's been around, what, 70, 80 years?
Over 80 years, yeah.
Over 80 years, there's a patience involved with this too, right? I mean, I've been an AEM member for a decade now, which feels like
Me
a
too.
lot, but in AEM years, that's not
It's
really that
nothing.
much,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Actually, speaking of, Ken Cook got its 50-year AEM, whatever, last year.
I remember.
Yeah.
I think I
Yeah. That
did a
was
standing ovation for that at the annual. That was great. I mean, you know, Ken used to serve on the board or on the committee, the service committee with us, and he was one of the first folks that welcomed me to AEM a decade ago. And so, but that's, you know, that's the point, is people have put their stripes in to earn that trust in this community, and so don't expect that it's going to happen overnight. You know, it's not. Um, you know, and so you have to, but you have to be giving those quick wins, those confidence builders, those trust builders. Again, we can't work in our own vacuums. We have to, you know, our own echo chambers. We have to realize the reality of kind of where folks are at that we're working with. So, and sometimes it's tempering their, you know, expectations too. They want to build this giant thing. They do want to do it all. And they like, let's start with this data transformation. We'll move to this and we'll go to this, and then we'll implement this full AI or this full immersive digital environment for everybody. And you're actually reeling them back. Maybe they aren't the ones that have the concerns. And you're saying, hey, that sounds beautiful in this like bubble, you know,
Yeah.
but here's
What
what's
are the
going to
safety
happen.
concerns? Here's the things I have to worry about. Here, what's the liability of this? What does this mean for, does this hurt your brand? What is the strategy behind, like, yeah, it's
The
you know,
optics, the pushback, the, you know,
yeah.
like, yes.
Yeah.
So
What does this mean from a public relations standpoint? Yeah, it's a lot of different pieces and stuff like that.
yeah.
So, yeah. Very cool. Noah, I really appreciate your time today. If you could do me a favor, one of the things is to close out, just simply, again, where your name, where you're from, how can they reach you? How can people like contact you guys? And basically that to end it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, full name's Noah Oakenberg. It's pretty unique. I think there's no other Noah Oakenberg in the history of time, as far as I know. So if you want to find me, you can just go on LinkedIn and search under that. I'm based here in Portland, Oregon. This is where our headquarters is for Above the Frey. And we are a digital consultancy that focuses on the makers and movers. So really the folks that are manufacturing and distributing, with a focus on digital commerce. And we do have folks all over the country as well. So this is our headquarters, but we have our team in multiple places, including right at the heart of AEM in Milwaukee. You know, we're easy to find. We're out and about. We're usually at most AEM events that there are. And we're really looking forward to rolling out a couple new projects for AEM as their new preferred digital provider, doing the member directory and the web store, which is coming up here soon. So keep your eyes out for that in 2026. We'll put a little bit of buzz and fanfare around it as well. Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on board here. I almost wore a hat to be, you know, the second guy in the hat. I really strongly considered it, but I didn't want to infringe upon your copyright. So
no copyright. The guy in the hat. I wish if I could own the guy in the hat.com and all the URLs and things like that, I would love that. But it just as a closing note outside of that, like the reason I'm the guy in the hat is because I wear this hat a lot and people started calling me that. They didn't remember my name. So they'd be like the guy in the hat. And so that kind of just took off. So that's the reason I still use that